Selling 50-50 tickets. The selling of the 50-50 raffle tickets was by far the most grueling part of the secretary job, at least for the 1991-1992 season. After recently having a chance to review some old MMSTL sheets, it seems evident that when the prior secretaries, David Ross, Tony Hughes, and Ken Crist, included their wives when performing the job, it was likely that the help received was due to the 50-50 sales. The MMSTL had a system in place in which the 50-50 tickets were partly a raffle and partly a type of stock investment system. The way it traditionally worked was that raffle tickets were sold in all three houses by the secretary on a given night. Because the league bowled at three different centers, the drawing for that week would not be done on that same night at the bowling alleys. The secretary would gather all tickets sold and the associated money, and then at home he would draw a series of winning raffle tickets with $50 going to each winner. The total money collected from the sales usually yielded 4 to 5 winners per week. These winning raffle numbers would be printed on the weekly standing sheet for the following week, so the bowlers would have to hold on to their tickets for a week and then present the winning stub to the secretary on that following week to get paid. Obviously, to ensure an honest raffle, I never bought tickets for myself under this setup of drawing numbers at home. But not all of the money collected went back to the weekly jackpots. Part of the money, somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 per week, would go into a separate 50-50 prize fund to be paid back to the bowlers at the end of the season on payoff night, based on the number of tickets that each bowler bought on an average throughout the bowling year. So the secretary would have to keep track generally of how much each person bought each week. For the most part, though, people always bought the same amount. That is to say, some bowlers would typically buy only $1 a week, others would consistently buy $2, and then some would buy $5 per week. Those who bought $1 a week would be entitled to one share of the end-of-year 50-50 prize fund. The $2 buyers would get 2 shares, and so on. So the 50-50 system was kind of like a mini Wall Street type of deal. It was actually a popular way of handling that part of the league prize fund. In relation to the general selling of tickets, there were 2 things to remember. You had to have change available before starting in case the first buyer or the first 2 buyers started with a $20 bill. And also, you had to approach each person. You couldn't just announce that you were there. People definitely wouldn't want to stand in line to purchase $1 or $2 in chances. You actually had to walk up to each bowler and sell to them. So that was one of the nuances of successful selling of the tickets in the league. The thing that made the selling of the 50-50 tickets physically draining was that the selling of the tickets was not limited to the travel league. Folks in neighboring leagues at the different bowling centers would also buy tickets on a consistent basis, which obligated the seller to visit members of the other leagues adjacent to the MMSTL. And with the traveling league bowling in 3 centers that ranged from 40 lanes, Prince George's Plaza and College Park, to 48 lanes at Fontana, it made for a very hectic night. I'd often have to answer questions from the MMSTL bowlers about the rules, substitutes, other info, etc., while I was selling tickets, so there wasn't much time to chit-chat. From my experience, it often took an hour to sell at Prince George's Plaza, since that was the second stop of the 3 houses that I'd visit each night, and it was usually a very full bowling center by that time during the 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock hour. Overall, there was hardly a moment to spare from the beginning of the night at my first stop at Fontana, which had 2 floors of 24 lanes in that building, to the final stop at College Park, especially on nights when traffic was slow between the Fontana and Prince George's commute, Friday night having rush hour at the heaviest. There were nights when I arrived at College Park just as some of the teams of the MMSTL were finishing for the night. In this regard, while some bowlers complain of slow bowling nowadays, back then I was happy with a more modest pace. When the 1992-1993 season rolled around, we unexpectedly lost a team the night before the league started, which dropped the league from 28 teams to an odd number of 27. Coincidentally, there were 4 available bowlers, a potential 29th team, however, who were without a higher average player to meet the league minimum, and they were going to drop from the league if they couldn't find an anchor bowler. Since I was carrying a decent league average at the time, I proposed the idea of myself bowling with this team to bring the league back up to an even number. The league voted on opening night to allow this, which meant asking some of the teams to assist me with selling the raffle tickets in the bowling establishments where I wasn't bowling on a week-to-week basis. In all honesty, despite the fact that the 1991-1992 season was an incredible amount of work, I wasn't really in favor of offering to bowl since I was being paid to do a job. But the 4 bowlers who were in the need of a 5th were longtime members of the Travel League, one of them being Elton Weiser, who was in the league in its inception back in 1960. And so I felt morally compelled to propose bowling with their team and then to ask for help with the 50-50 and simply plan on doing more work in other ways to compensate the league. In the long run, it all seemed to work out for the best. After a year or two of this new system for ticket sales, problems came up with the stock system for the 50-50, as I was getting reports from a few of the sellers of the tickets that some of the players in the houses where I wasn't bowling weren't following through with buying their shares, and thus it wasn't fair to pay out full shares to everyone as it had been done in the past, on payoff night, that is. So eventually the league just went to a straight raffle system at each house that paid off each night, with half of the money collected going to the winner and the other half diverted to the overall league prize fund.